Hey, this episode is brought to you in part by Slate Real Estate Advisors and Signature Doors and Windows. Now, onto the show.
Full moons are very creative moments for me, and I need to always make time for that. Like the 2 days before, the 2 days after, like that time, and I still do it. I mean, that meeting with my staff is a creative endeavor. Like, what do we want to be as a creative endeavor? Painting's a creative endeavor. Drawing a beautiful facade's a creative endeavor, but also like being a businessman and an entrepreneur now, what do we want to be?
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello and welcome to Architecting.
Go ahead.
What do you say? I'm trying to think of something new, but I don't know how anything. I was going to say good evening, but that would be weird because you don't know when they're going to listen to it.
You shouldn't whisper because I still might use this. So just say it loud.
Hi, welcome to Architecting. I'm Rebecca Wagner here with the host, Adam Wagner. Hey, Adam, who's on the podcast today?
Yeah, good evening. So today we have, I always say I'm excited, but this one, I think I called him my white whale. He's a guy that I applied to when we moved here. And I think a lot of people who moved to Colorado apply to this firm. And I feel like I just keep bugging him over and over to try to meet up or try to do things, and he's a very busy guy, so I've never nailed him down until this podcast, and it was really fun. Who am I talking about? Michael M. Moore of Trace Birds. So again, I've never actually had talked to him before, but he was really like this like deep well of energy and ideas and action and excitement. It just seems like he thinks and he works very hard and deeply, and he gets really interested in things and really just dives into them. So, I really like a lot of their projects, and I wanted to get into a lot of their projects, especially around Denver. There's a lot of great projects. I love spending time at the Family Jones. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And other projects just around us even. But we barely talked about any projects because this guy was just so interesting and kept going off different tangents, and just the way he got to Trace for Birds and the way he formed it and founded it is just really interesting. So, it's a longer one, and we didn't talk about that many projects.
But I bet it's a good story.
It's a good story. He's just very focused on a lot of different things, be it from sort of art, but also construction, and use of light and time and sustainability and reuse of materials and energy. There's a lot there to him, and he at least in this interview, he makes it seem pretty effortless, as well as just building this firm, this design build firm that seems successful and seems to be made up of a group of very talented, flexible team members and employees.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Is this introduction like as meandering as
well, we'll find out.
The interview is. But do you hear the excitement in my voice? That's what he gives. So anyway, this was a fun one. Enjoy. But hey, today's episode is sponsored by Slate Real Estate Advisors, and we have Slate's co-founder, Jorgen Jensen, here to tell us more about their company.
Thanks, Adam. Slate is a residential real estate brokerage created for design-conscious buyers, sellers, and developers. We do have an office in Lower Highlands. We've been here for 6 years. We're currently located at the corner of 17th and Central Street. At Slate, our passion has always been to connect people to exceptional living spaces. We are driven by design and the opportunity we have to enhance the quality of our built environment, local communities, and the lives of our clients.
And I really love how engaged Slate is with our Colorado design community. They've published a design directory on their website highlighting many local architects, good architects, many of whom I've had on this show or who will be on this show. They've launched an art space in their office called Nook. It's Denver's smallest art gallery, as a platform for engaging the local art community and hosting events. And they published the Slate Edition, a digital newsletter where they highlight some of the people, spaces, and places that they find most inspiring, both locally and globally. We're glad to have them as a partner here on the show and look forward to more of what they do. Check them out at slaterea.com. Hey, we're happy to be sponsored by Modern in Denver magazine. For over a decade, they've been crafting fantastically curated content on Colorado designers and projects, spreading the gospel of good design within our region.
And I love how the goal of Modern in Denver aligns with the goal of this podcast, to better build up and connect the community of Colorado designers. So go buy a copy of the magazine at your local bookstand, subscribe to their weekly email list, and follow them on Instagram.
Check it out.
How you doing?
Good. How's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, I had quite a good day. We had some of my core people really kind of visioning who we want to be as a firm. Try to do that at the right times, and it's I'm open to change, and change is positive, and so yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, it seems like it could be kind of hard to stop working and focus on those sort of culture and firm things, but then those are the actual most important things.
They are, because you may know this, right? But yeah, you can just put the blinders on and go somewhere you don't necessarily want to go.
Yeah. And it seemed like you guys had a ski day the other week or something from your Instagram.
We did on Wednesday, which is not we do it once a year.
That's not your typical Wednesday.
We've had a couple of years where we've done it more than once. So it's not like something we do all the time, but it's super fun. It's so great because it's like, it's like the equalizer in terms of, we've got some new people here that are younger that maybe don't, a little insecure in the office. Then you go skiing and they're fucking rippers.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, we're all good. It's like soccer. Soccer's been that for our company too.
Yeah.
We've had like a soccer team, and like, it's usually like the younger, newer people who are like, yeah. Make Mike look good.
That's funny. But, sometimes it can be the opposite. Like, I love those office ski days. And I was at one firm and we got there and, like, one guy showed up, like, wearing jeans. And we got up to the top of the lift. We figured out he'd never skied before and, like, ran right into a pole. And, like,
oh, no.
I mean, showing up in jeans, you pretty much know he's never skied before. Or else you're really good, maybe. But, that's funny.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, cool. You're like my white whale here. Like I feel like I've been pestering you for like 6-7 years, and I'm finally got you pinned down.
You didn't pester me once, and I remember you reaching out because I remember you were married and you guys were overseas, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. It sounds interesting. I remember we talked. Maybe
I think we had an email. That's okay. We've never talked, and that's But,
well, if I was ever not very good at communication, don't take it personally. I've got young girl. I've had all kinds of. I got grandma living with us right now. I have daughters. I got wolf dogs. I got a company. I got my art. Sometimes my communication is less than desirable.
No, your communication was better than most, and it definitely wasn't bad. But I feel like each person who moves here and I talk to them, or a younger person, and we're talking about firms, and everybody says they apply to Trace Birds, and so it's just like, what is that like for you? You have to get this like onslaught of emails all the time, and to try to catch up with people you we'll probably never see, or it's got to be tough being
Yeah,
so good, being so famous.
Yeah, trying not to be rude, but also like there can be some real gems that reach out to you. And I mean, I've hired most everyone here reached out to me. Gosh, almost everyone. They reached out, and good timing. Good timing for reaching out, or I always look at. I will say this with everyone. I receive all that inquiry. It comes to me, and our office manager, but I don't know if she really looks at it. But I look at every portfolio that comes in, because that's usually for me what matters. I don't really care what school. I don't really care how much experience. I don't really, what I've tried to get a skill at is determining, well, which of these projects I'm looking at did they actually do, or which was like a group effort. Right. I can usually tell, and it's usually like the hand drawings at the end that are the individuals, and I mostly look at those. I'm like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah, it's had to have gotten a little bit more difficult, right? In the years where, with more rendering, where somebody could be really good at rendering and it does kind of blow you away a little bit, but then they get.
I can kind of see through that too.
Right.
I can kind of see through that too, for sure.
Yeah, and that's students come show me portfolios and I say like, where's that study model that we did in week 3, right? Like that was the best thing you did in the studio. Put that stuff in, right? Put the sketches in.
Yeah, you've been a studio professor at CU Denver this whole time. Good for you. Yeah, that's where I went to school. I got my master's degree there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, let's get into that then.
All right,
so,
cool.
Mike Moore. So answer this awkward question first. So who are you in 2 sentences?
Whew.
Or less, maybe 3 words.
Or more. Genetically, just because I just did a 23andMe. That's what I asked for Christmas. I asked for a 23andMe for me and my wolf dog. We'll start with wolf dog.
Yeah.
Knew nothing about her other than she howls. She's very family oriented. She loves blood. She's likes being outside all the time. She's 10% wolf.
Wow.
10% coyote.
Wow.
20% like Ute husky.
Huh.
And then, anyways, I forget the rest, but I kind of focused on the wolf and the coyote.
Yeah,
and I got mine back, and it was 70% Northern British Isles and 30% Russian.
Oh, wow. And what, 5% coyote or what?
Maybe 3 to 5% coyote.
Northern British Isles, and so some Viking made it over from Russia at one time. 30% of you,
something. I how about I describe myself as a Pisces sun sign.
Cool.
A Virgo moon and a Capricorn ascending. And I was born on a full moon.
Wow.
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1970. Today is a full moon. My wife is an astrologer, an astrologist, and a very good one. AquariusRisingAstrology.com, and actually has been very influential in the last 20 years to me personally, discovering my highest good, and also really practical things with business, like when to present a contract and when not to. Because there's certain times where shit's really slow and other times where people are more decisive and want to act. But yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. That's definitely one of the most unique Who Am I's. I like sort of all the categorizing and labeling there in the different ways. So how did you grow up? Have you always sort of been that way? Where are you from?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, kind of middle class suburb. Fortunately, the Milwaukee public school system back in the 70s and 80s offered art classes, had an art studio and had art classes the whole way. I took as many as I could. I took everything everyone ever offered the whole time. When I was in grade school, it was because I just loved it. And then in middle school, it was because it was kind of easy and I could get a good grade. And then in high school, I was a highly competitive soccer player. And I made this correlation between days that I would be immersed in fine arts. I'd have my best games that night.
Really?
And so it was more of like this, like art was like a means to like be a better soccer player. It was weird. But, and then growing up, 70s, 80s, off on our own, not a lot of parent oversight, loving parents, unconditional love, but we just kind of leave for the day and come back at dark. And I never thought about architecture. I mean, in a formal way. I didn't know any architects. I had nothing like that in my life. Very, mediocre suburban homes and horrible schools with no daylighting and stinky. And but when I do think about childhood, even through high school, we were always making stuff out in the woods and making forts. And in the winter, we had lots of snow. And my brother and I had a snow shoveling business, and we would make big piles of snow and make forts. And during the summer, we would borrow scraps from construction sites and make forts up in trees in the woods. So we were building stuff very primitively and out of just kind of what was there.
Were you around? Were you around artists? Were your parents into art or in like construction field or anything?
They were not. They were not. But my mom put an emphasis on exposing us to the arts always. So like, the big Christmas present would be to go to Chicago and see a Broadway play, or to go to the art museum and see Monet when it was coming through town. And she's continued doing that. She is she just turned 80, and she continues to find new museums and frequent all of her favorite ones, and be a part of that and be really active in that. The only architect I knew is Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch.
Oh yeah, I was trying to scan like my architectural history and place the name, but I got it.
That's not that was just being funny.
Right.
I would say that certainly Frank Lloyd Wright was an ongoing presence.
You were in Frank Lloyd Wright country.
One of my good friends in like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade was lived in a Usonian house, and I remember I loved it. I remember playing with Star Wars figures and these big windows that went all the way down to the ground, and wood and glass. And I do. I can see it now. I can see the light and the shadows and the contrast.
Would you get into like Chicago much and see?
Yeah,
because that's not that far, right?
About an hour and a half. So that would be like kind of special trips to the field house, or I think of plays. I think of fashion. I would say the fine arts was definitely had my attention, and I just loved to do it. And I just kind of did it on my own through school. I'd put in tons of time. I'd stay up really late at night just because I would get energy from it. It's like I couldn't put it down feeling.
Yeah.
Just couldn't, like, I would rather be tired the next day and finish it than stop, because I probably wouldn't sleep anyways. I'd just be thinking about it the whole time. So that was Milwaukee. And then I was fortunate and worked hard with soccer and got a scholarship out to UC Berkeley.
Wow.
Played on their Division I soccer team, was their captain,
Wow.
won a national championship freshman year.
You must have been doing a lot of art there to be that good.
I was doing a lot of art there. I majored in, I actually had some roommates that were in architecture and landscape, and I felt sorry for them because they were like never around. They were always pale and hungry and over caffeinated. And I didn't take my academics super seriously in undergrad. I got a lot out of it in retrospect, but I was not like, certainly not going for high grades. It was more experiences. And, but I did a dual degree. I kind of made up one of them. It was in the School of Conservation and Resource Studies, but I had this really awesome advisor, John Hurst, who established the Knowles Outdoor School program. And he kind of let me make my own syllabi and program. And I ended up studying energy flow in communities. So I took forestry classes, urban agriculture classes, environmental biologies, environmental chemistry. I took social science. I took environmental law classes, which were very difficult, but really awesome. And then I did a minor in fine arts. And so I was able to, they had a great lab. I was able to sculpture. I touched almost everything. Wow. Particularly at Berkeley, I touched everything: welding, wood, ceramics, oil painting, acrylic, watercolor, color theory, art history. And Bay Area is kind of awesome for seeing things too, right? It was kind of the beginning of West Coast street art was happening then. So I was, observing and participating in that, and very robust, multidisciplinary education in undergrad.
Yeah. And so when you
also some pretty tough years too. Like my freshman year was the earthquake of '89, and the Bay Bridge fell down, but our dorm was condemned. It was pretty big deal. Sophomore year, the Oakland Hills burned down, and the fire came right to our house, and we were like firefighting, and the soles of our shoes were melting off, and it was and it smelled like burnt eucalyptus for the rest of my time there. And then junior year, we'll skip that. Senior year was the Rodney King riots. Oh, wow. So we had a curfew of 6 p.m. for 2 months, and cop cars were flipped over and burning, and any sort of mass consumer capitalist sort of enterprise had their windows broken and were pillaged. And at the end of it, I bailed to the mountains of Colorado. I was just like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that idea of
what do I do with all this information?
You gotta get out of here. Yeah. But that idea of like a community energy flow. I mean, so you're talking like environmental forces, economic forces, social force, like encapsulating all of that, and especially with those 3 years
but particularly fossil fuel usage.
Oh, okay.
And what I learned in 1990, and I didn't know what to do with it until I started Trace Birds, or really until I went back to get my master's degree when I was 30. I didn't know what to do with this information, but I learned that, as Americans, we're using more energy than anyone else in the world, like tenfold.
Yeah.
And our buildings are responsible for about 50% of fossil fuel usage in the creation of them and the operations. So the overall embodied energy of how we're habitating and working and entertaining ourselves is going to kill us.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do with it. I taught for a while. I taught environmental sciences at Berkeley High, and then I moved to Crested, Butte, Colorado, and was part of starting a little ski racing academy. I was taught environmental sciences and soccer coach, snowboard coach, van maintenance guy, lunch cook, and Yeah, just generally rallier.
You're like, I need to pick up a few more skills here. Yeah, I didn't do enough things at Berkeley, and
yeah.
And it was just you were brought to Colorado for sort of that job, or you were like, this is where I need to be.
I grew up skateboarding too. Like I started playing soccer when I was like 5, but I started skateboarding when I was like 3 or 4 in the 70s. Those little thin, little sidewalk surfers. And I just kept going and progressing with that. And I think I was 13. My friends and I were building a skate ramp with, woodworking and, carpentry, right? And we had no idea what we were doing. But there was like construction documents in a Thrasher magazine. It was like the centerfold, and it showed how to make like a proper like little mini half pipe. And on the back, and we had this, and we used it all summer. On the back of it was this little ad, and it had Jake Burton like on a snowboard making a big turn, and it said like Burton snowboards, and I was like, "What is that?" Like, I live in this snowy place where I can't skateboard for 6 months, 5-6 months out of the year. What is that? So actually, my parents got me one for Christmas, and so I was like, it was their first model. And then I got super into snowboarding. I loved it. Like, I'm surprised I didn't drop out of Berkeley and just become a snowboarder. All I wanted to do was do that. Like, I just wanted to like do that as much as possible and be in powder and look for things and explore and mountaineer. And that's really like towards the end of my, and my friend group were all interested in climbing and mountaineering and just adventuring and getting to places no one else could get to. And so I would, and then some spring breaks, we came out to Colorado and experienced some of that. And so I moved to Colorado for snowboarding, basically.
Seems like when you get into things, you really get into things.
I do.
You go full. Yeah.
I like it. I like going down the rabbit hole of like, well, not only how good you can get at it, but it's also like even like the gear and like tweaking the gear to make it work better for like the style I want, as opposed to like just the standard issue skateboard. Well, what if we take those trucks and like get rid of the risers and put them a little further apart? Well, you can ollie easier. Like, I like tweaking with things that then you can have first person experience, like using them and go, oh, wow, that like sucks, or that like made it way better, or it's like different. Like you can turn it better, but it can't jump as good. Like I just like that stuff. So that's part of it. So it's kind of an engineering, kind of an athletic, kind of a flow sport combo that makes it interesting to me.
Yeah. And so you're living your dream there for a little bit, and then what makes you go back to school then?
I realized I was never going to make it down there. I wasn't independently wealthy. I had to make my own self. I came there with no money, and it was a struggle just to like find somewhere to live and just sort of survive. And I quickly realized that like a lot of the people I was hanging out with that were like going to Alaska in the spring and doing peaks and all this stuff, like their day jobs weren't paying for that, So I was like, okay, I've got to make myself. And while I was there teaching, I was also building houses because it was a high paid job for someone that was physically able and smart enough and decent with math. And I was noticing as I was building these houses that I was like, did anyone like look at the situation here? Like this window, like there's this killer view right here. And this window is like 4 feet slid over looking at the neighbor's garage. Like, did anyone come down here and like assess the situation? I just started getting curious about it. And, we reclaimed some of the alley sheds down in Crested Butte and made them into kind of squatter houses and sort of skid houses, and working on the old buildings and trying to keep them like vintage because we had to, because they're historic, but then make them well enough insulated and heated enough. And, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was kind of like artwork. You had to figure it out each day and kind of go with the flow. Like, you'd have a plan, but because it's existing building, you can't have too rigid of a plan because things are going to be exposed along the way. And you just got to make the most of it out of every opportunity. And so I really enjoyed that. And then, you know, it was a little bit of desperation too, because I was like, okay, I have no money. My undergrad, I don't know what job that gets me. And so I started some inquiry. I came up to Denver a few times. It's funny, I watched your EJ Mead show, your last one, which was really enjoyable because he was one of the first people I met.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a studio professor. I looked into the CU program in Denver, and I came up from Crested, Butte just to visit. They were doing final studio reviews. I'd never seen anything like that before. I went to it. He was super cool. He invited me to like a party at his new firm's office that night. I went to it. I remember his daughter was a little girl with these beautiful eyes, and just very, everyone was cool. And then that same trip, I remember going to the Patagonia store to like return a just butcher jacket that I totally overused because they give you free ones.
Yeah.
And Jim Logan had designed their new store, not the newest one, but the one before on, oh gosh, was that 15th?
Yeah, 15th. Yeah.
And he was actually giving a presentation that night about design and non-toxic building construction, which I was super interested in. And I remember meeting him that night. And so that was a kind of cool trip. And I ended up working for Jim Logan. That was my first job.
That was a good trip, right? I mean,
yeah,
stars aligned.
2 years later.
It was a full moon and everything. And yeah, it all aligned.
Could have been. I didn't pay as much attention. That was pre astrologist wife who she's the one who told me that I was born on a full moon because she did her research, right? She does 5 hours of research, right? She takes your birth date, your birth time, your birth location, and then there's a whole array of what went on at that moment. And so she told me at the full moon, and she gave me one of the best advices I've had in my life. And that was that the way who I am, full moons are very creative moments for me. And I need to always make time for that. Like that, like the 2 days before, the 2 days after, like that time, like, and I still do it. I did it today. I mean, that meeting with my staff is a creative endeavor. Like, what do we want to be as a creative endeavor? Painting's a creative endeavor. Drawing a beautiful facade's a creative endeavor, but also like being a businessman and an entrepreneur now, like it also like, what do we want to be?
And a leader.
And what's the opportunity and what could we be? And like thinking outside of what we are. But that was like incredible advice that I've really stuck to. Like I put it in my phone, like the full moon on this day, do not put like financial meetings during those days. Do not put things that are like swing me in some like thought pattern that I don't want, like don't meet with the lawyers on those days, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so you had that great day, you decided to go to CU, you get there, you're driven, you've been building stuff, you've done a bunch of undergrad, you get in.
And I didn't get in.
You didn't get in?
No, I didn't get in. No.
What happened there?
I don't know.
You just refused to leave, and no one questioned you. And
no. I applied. I got a little letter back. I moved to Denver. You know, the 7 months before school was going to start. I got a framing job. It was horrible. I actually hurt my back. I fell off the house. It was not great. I had a horrible place to live. Didn't get in. Met with Peter Schneider, who was the dean at that point, made an appointment with him. It's like, listen, I didn't get in. What's the deal? You know, like, I'm going to be great, you know? And, he was very candid. maybe I shouldn't say this, but he said, the reality is, your portfolio, you've had some good education, and you may be appropriate here, but we're going to wait to see how many out of country students apply first, and then we'll see if there's room for you. And there ended up being room about 2 weeks before the school season, before school started. So I made it. I made the cut.
So you get in there, and it seems like everything you've been doing, right? Your creative, like your design thinking, your kind of social and energy thinking and studies and construction, like it all merges into architecture, right? And into studio.
It did.
And so did you get in there and you were like, oh, this is exactly the sandbox that I needed? Or was it like, wow, this is not what I expected and blowing my mind a bit?
It blew my mind. It's not what I expected, but like after that, like particularly studio that first semester, I'm like, I'm pretty good at this. Like I knew, like I just kind of looking around and look at like talking about composition and datums and light and shadow. I was like, yeah, that's how I see the world. That's how I think all the time. Everything you're saying makes total sense to me. And then the art background is so key. Like it's such a foundation for all of it. The history, because the history of architecture and the history of art paralleled one another. Art came first, architecture followed, right? Mm-hmm. We got it's like artist lead, and then maybe like music and fashion follow behind a little bit. And then architecture used to be like 20 to 50 years behind. Now it's probably like 5 years behind or a month behind. Yeah. But like, there used to be that sort of time lapse between the disciplines. So
cloth and paint are a little bit cheaper and faster than I-beams, wood and concrete, and,
right? Or making a song, making a lick and having a good lyric that everyone resonates with. It's
there you go, done. Yep.
Yeah.
So nice. So it was what you expected, or it was kind of down your path and helping you set that up. What or who was influential throughout that time for you?
Everyone, the fellow students, the professors, all the authors, the books we read, the art, the architecture history. But I'd say particularly Barbara Ombach was my first studio professor. Actually, Sean Mather, who's just over there, we were in the same studio together. I stole him from some big firm when I had a big project about 16 years ago,
nice.
Which was nice. But yeah, Barbara's studio was awesome. We hand drew everything, models, just the whole works, and I just loved it. I would go so hard on the models, and I would spend way too much money. Just like I've got to use these 3 different woods, and just the whole thing. Keith Lofton was amazing with the history and some of I took a lot of classes with him, and he was my advisor. I wrote a thesis, and that was incredibly important. The thesis was so important. I mean, it is what I'm doing every day. Is that thesis was the seed of all this, really. Julie Hurt for just exploring things, and I was already really interested in making something out of nothing. I've always loved hip hop and rap, and just that make something out of nothing. You don't need instruments. You just need a good idea and some rhythm. And so that's what she was all about. All of the studios I took with her and other things we did together.
I like that idea. I never did a thesis. It was always sort of just independent studios kind of cobbled together. But I was talking to Mark Swackhammer on here, and he was saying any good thesis is something that haunts you or challenges you the rest of your career, right? It's like this open-ended challenge. And so what was that for you? what was
What
that
was
thesis?
it?
Yeah. And what is it still? What has evolved into?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
We could just keep on going. Paint me a picture here.
I'll paint you a picture. Yeah. So I kind of have to give the long story to make any sense. But okay, so moved to Denver, got into school. I started school, and I only had the first semester where all I did was school. And I actually got this job with Jim Logan after my first semester, and I worked for him, I think 30 hours a week for the rest of the first, because I did a 3-year program, because I had unrelated undergrad. And then I worked for him like 30 hours a week my second year, and then full time my third year. And I was like project managing like legitimate projects. It was
That's
awesome.
crazy.
But it was a lot.
Yeah.
Like I didn't, it was like 6 hours of sleep and like, but anyways, after that first semester, a drunk driver hit me head on at like 10 in the morning with all my whole semester's worth of models and my friend Janie Chivet. All of her work was in the back of my little Subaru. These cowboys hit me head on 58th Street, and I really hurt myself. Like, I just really airbags, jaw of life. I had, I didn't have broken bones, but just like all my ligaments, like the next day I couldn't move kind of thing. And so just and unfortunately I didn't have health insurance at the time. So there was a yoga studio proximal to where I lived, and I started doing yoga like all the time to try to get out of this injury state. And fortunately, I just got kind of lucky. This yoga studio happened to be the yoga studio of a gentleman named Richard Freeman, who's a master. Spent 20 years in India as a Sufi, and came back to the United States to like teach us fat, ugly Americans yoga, But he very much knew the doctrines and the literature. And so on Sunday nights, he'd give talks for 2 hours and yada, yada. So I started really studying that thought. And maybe for the first time in my life, I would get these moments of like total clarity. It wasn't prolonged. We're talking seconds at times, maybe minutes, maybe afternoons in the backcountry skiing or something like this just clarity.
But in like really different, like it really felt like a different,
distinctly different than anything I had ever experienced before. Maybe I think I'd experienced a couple times in soccer games, like the ball's coming and like I'm going to it and like head it and watch it go in the back of the net. It's all silent and everything slows down and all of my senses are like hyper awakened. Like I'd had it a few times, but I think the yoga and the literature, I was getting it more often. And so I was very interested in that. And that's while I was in school. And then I was also extremely interested in, when I was in school, mobile phones, the use of computers, sort of digital everything was really coming on board. I mean, this is, I was getting my master's degree in 1997, 8, 9.
Yeah.
So that was all coming on board. Like the first AutoCAD classes were being taught, whatever. And I was noticing that those devices were removing us from direct experiences with nature. I was just seeing it in my day-to-day life. I was experiencing it firsthand. I was seeing it with other people. I was seeing it in the city. And so I was very interested because I had this privilege of being in wilderness, climbing, skiing, living in wilderness at times in my life, of how important that is, and having a connection to natural systems, how important that is to just well-being and just general health and happiness and good ideas. I always get my best, still to this day, I get my best ideas going on a hike or skiing. Like I figure all the shit during the week, and then it's all business. And then like I'll be out somewhere and like things will start making sense. And so I always carry a little notebook and a pencil that has tons of lead and like I can always use and like so I can come back to the office and be like, hey, don't forget about this. This is really important. So I was really interested in that. Like, how do we reconnect with nature? Because I felt like everyone was getting further and further away from it. And then I totally randomly saw some images of this building in Switzerland, the thermal baths and falls by Peter Zumthor. Mm-hmm. And I just on a whim was like, I think he's doing what I'm thinking about. And I don't know. And it was just intuition. I had no idea. So back to the thesis. So Keith Lofton, we came up with a reading list of about 50 books. I spent the full year. And he had me, the program was every single day, except for Sundays. I'd wake up at 5, I'd read for an hour, and I'd write for an hour. And the writing was a response to the reading, but it didn't have to be like, I wasn't directed towards the thesis. It didn't have like a purpose to like try to prove something or continue the thought from the day before. It was like free writing, and I would handwrite. It wasn't on a computer. I kept these journals. Did that for a full year. I had 18 journals full.
Wow.
50
and this
books.
was this was your second year in
this
school?
is third year.
Third
year.
I
did the thesis during the third year.
Yeah.
And during that process, about halfway through it, I don't know who suggested it. It might have been Keith. It might have been me. I was like, I think I should go visit Peter Zumthor and see his buildings and interview him. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea how I contacted him. I still actually have the book that I brought that's got his phone number written in it. This is. I mean, you still can't contact him. He doesn't have a fucking website, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know how I contacted him, but
he
anyways.
could sense the kindred spirit in that letter, that handwritten letter, and
something. It was probably something like that. Well, I went there to tour Switzerland. I started it I interviewed him, and I taped it. It was a 3-hour interview in his studio, which was so awesome.
Wow.
Like the whole experience. It's in this medieval town. It's next to a graveyard. It's kind of tight. House is proximal, and it's this very simple building. And you open the front door, and there's this very heavy black leather curtain that you have to push your way through. Wow. And he greeted me, and we went into his parlor where he had a humidor that was built into the wall. And so he pulled out this fresh cigar and started it. And the interview went till he was done. And that was about 3 hours. He'd smoke it and then let it sit and relight it. And it was just kind of this thing. But I interviewed him twice. So I did that on the first. And then I went to the only 7 buildings that he completed. So I went to the thermal baths. I went to the Kunsthaus. I went to, he did these 2 homes. I went to this home for senior citizens that was built in 93. I went to the St. Benedict Chapel. I went to the Roman excavation.
Yeah.
So I went to all these and I knew enough from my thesis development that what was going on, if we can get the intellect out of things and just experience things with all your senses, you connect quickest with nature, and nature can like respond to you. When you get the intellect out.
By reading 50 books, you figured to get the intellect out. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Had to through yeah. So man. So then what was then you came back after that trip. I mean, like back to Zumthor and had another discussion. And how did those two differ? Those 2 discussions. After I saw the buildings,
I made this other, which I never would have known through a magazine picture, right? That, being at the thermal baths, I spent 4 days in that valley, and it's this incredible alpine valley. Have you been there?
Yeah, I've been to the Bass for one day.
Okay.
Like the best day of my life. Yeah.
Right. So I spent 4 days there, but I also hiked and I totally explored. It was like end of October when the thermal waters are flowing. And, when I put the connection, I went to the thermal baths right away. Like, I got to see this thing, like, check it out. And he's got you naked. And he's got your senses just like in every way he could get your senses.
Yeah.
But then it was these subtler things like laying on those lounge chairs and that composed music that was very eerie and odd. But it wasn't until a couple days that I realized, oh my God, someone made a symphony out of all the noises from the town. Like the chains on the sheep's necks, the bell that goes to let the shepherds know it's time to let the sheep out, the wagon that carries the hay. Like he hired a German composer to take all those sounds and make an ambient symphony that when you're laying in that lounge, looking out that little portal at the other hillside and you're seeing the shepherd smoking his pipe with his sheep, you're getting that, or subtle things like, obviously the building's made out of all this blue stone. Well, I'm hiking and I'm realizing, all the little markers for the trails, like they don't have signs like in Boulder, right? That say like Chautauqua this way. Like it's a little marker and it's got a letter or a number and it means something. That all those markers were also that blue stone. And then one random morning where I did I rented a bike and I went way down valley and I ended up at this mine that, holy shit, this is the mine where you got all the rock from. Because there's still pieces that were cut that were leftovers from building the baths here at the end. So this whole idea of regionalism.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing with all of our projects, every single one of them. I'm trying to, as much as possible, it's materials from as close to that site as possible because there's a spirit to them. There's materials are animate. They're alive. These aren't dead things. They have spirit and people feel that when you're done, if you use them right.
Yeah.
And so it's like this regionalism in all these different audio through the symphony, visual through the color of the rock, the texture of the rock, the feel of it, and how it snaps, and when you snap that rock, what pattern does it create when you snap that rock? Because every rock, when you snap it, naturally creates a different pattern, has different texture. What does that rock do? And so that was really the second interview, was really tapping into that regionalism and how he's practicing that. And how he goes about that. Because I knew he was going to go big. Because I saw these buildings. I'm like, these are the best buildings I've ever been in my life. And if he wants to, I'm sure he can do these anywhere he chooses.
Yeah.
How is he going to apply that to not just his little valley? Because at that time, he had not worked outside of Switzerland.
Right.
Well,
yeah, right.
Austria, Bregenz was Austria, but everything was within 200 kilometers from his office, every single building. The thesis was very important.
So then what came out of that? Did a building design come out of that, or it was more of the thought process?
It was like a 50-page paper, and so when I would visit his buildings, I would that night write about my experience, and I would write about all the senses, all my senses that were engaged and how. And I would just write about even thoughts that I had while I was there. It was very abstract, very loose, very journal, very couple glasses of wine sort of writing.
Yeah.
And then the thesis, all those writings that I did from the 50 books from the year of an hour of writing every morning, and the writings I did about the firsthand experience, I brought those all together, and that's where Keith was super helpful, because he had, we had all this information, like how do we organize this and create a structure to it? And so basically it was like a couple pages of firsthand experience, and then it was like the readings that like support that and like that support that. And I was really looking for like, how do I carry this on as a practitioner of this discipline of architecture? How do I apply this to everything I get involved in, whether it's a sculpture that I'm commissioned to do, or an apartment building, or an art museum, or a remodel of someone's, kitchen, like whatever, how do I apply all this? And that's really what that was about.
Man, yeah, you don't do anything easy. You really do dive in. So you graduate and you have this huge backpack of experiences and interests and self-drivenness. Like, could any firm satisfy that for you? Did you start Trace Birds right away? Is that what happened?
I did. The day I handed in my thesis, I fucking started Trace Birds. Literally, I got a call from a friend who was a ski partner of mine that we were doing a lot of mountaineering stuff with, and he said, "Hey, my good friend Brooks is this hot photographer in Boulder right now. He's shooting for Audi and shooting for Specialized and all this, and he just bought a lot in Boulder County, and he wants to do a studio. And I recommended you. Would you be able to do that?" And I was like, "Yep."
This is probably a stupid question from talking to you, but like, was there any fear there of starting the firm and like of doing that? I doubt it, but it had to be.
Yeah, this is July of 2000. And I had worked for Jim Logan for 3 years, but taken on a lot, project managed decent sized projects, brought AutoCAD into his office, really had a good understanding of process, and, my building background was helpful. It's almost like to some extent, I didn't know enough to be too scared. I didn't know enough about running a business to be scared.
Yeah.
Like if, it's one of those things, like if I would have known then what I know now, would I have done it? I'm not sure if I would have.
Yeah.
No regrets.
Right.
I feel blessed that we can have this conversation, and that we have the projects that we're working on right now and the projects we've completed, and I have this incredible staff. I'll talk about the staff thing in a moment, because I think that's very pertinent to this conversation. But I took on this photography studio. I let Jim know that I was going out on my own, and he was somewhat supportive.
And you said, "Can you maybe stamp some stuff for me sometimes?" And
yeah. No, I didn't. But this photography studio, Brooks and I came up with a good idea early on, and I made this physical model of it, and I knew what we wanted to do, and it was all about daylighting. It was all about, he said he'd never had a building where he could like shoot portraits and stuff inside. He always needs lots of artificial lighting. It's sort of this artificial lighting game. Even though he was an on-site location photographer, he would do things out in the wild, but then he'd come back to the studio to shoot product and details and things like that. And also just to be his office and to be a bit of an entertaining spot, and also like where everyone would meet before they'd go out to the shoot, the entourage and the product and the owners of the company, they'd all meet at the intention was they meet at the studio, they go out and shoot, and then they end up at the studio and drink beers and smoke weed and have a good time,
nice.
Whatever. And so we came up with an idea that was good. I modeled it, and during that process, it just became evident to me. I'm like, I should build this too. Like this, it's unusual enough that I just had an intuition that if he went out to a regular general contractor, that it's going to be way too expensive. And I just really believed in it, and I wanted to make sure it happened. So I committed. I'm like, all right, I'll be the general contractor. I got my general contractor's license. And literally Brooks, myself, and one of his really good friends, Pat, built the whole thing. We had a handful of subs through, but hardly any. And
what's that project called? Is it on the
called
website?
Freehill Studio.
Freehill Studio.
Yeah. It's like 3 mass concrete walls. And we made a timber frame south wall out of reclaimed 4x12 timbers that came out of a building in Denver. So anyways, I committed to building it and then started pricing things and realized right away that we were way over budget. So then we were like, okay, what can we do here? And so Brooks was pretty savvy at this also and taught me quite a bit. But like very early on, I was riding my bike in Longmont, just on a bike ride, and there's a bowling alley lane facility that was closed, and it was being demolished. The building was being demolished. And I was like, oh, I wonder if they're selling any of the bowling shoes. Those used to be cool. Like bowling shoes are cool. I wonder if there's like bowling shoes in there. So I put my bike, went inside, and there's like 15 dudes taking apart the bowling alley lanes. Like they're made of lamp strip. They're laminated, right? 2.5 inch thick, 1 inch, broadleaf pine, and they're taking these things apart like this, and 18 of these lanes, and they're 60 feet long. And I was like, I speak Spanish. I was like, que es un, el jefe de los trabajos, este site, and we're talking. And I talked to the boss, and he's like, yeah, we're just gonna landfill that wood and take it to the dump. And I was like, could you stop? And could I buy these lanes from you? And he's like, you're going to buy them from us? And I was like, yeah. And we negotiated some very low number. And I said, okay, I looked around. I'm like, so you're demolishing this whole building, right? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, are you going to take the roof off first? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, let me know when the roof's off, and I'm going to get the lanes. So let me know when the roof's. I rented a crane for the day. I picked them all. They're in 24-foot sections, put them on the back of my truck. And we built a lot of the studio out of bowling alley lanes. I just recently built an ADU at my house out of bowling lanes too. I bought them, I think 6 times now. We've bought every lane out of defunct bowling alley lane place. But I got in that mentality right away with the first Trace Birds. It was like, okay, what are the materials? Not just like Zumthor with like a mine of blue stone. Yeah. But like, what are these things in our American consumer environment that are just there in our communities? Like, what's there? Well, there's these bowling alley lanes. There's buildings coming down with timbers that most demo people are just knocking the building down as quickly as possible and putting in a landfill. Well, what if when you take the roof off, what if you give my crew 7 days and we'll take it all apart, take it, pay you for the wood, And so we just got in that mentality, and we built the photography studio primarily out of reclaimed materials. The timber frame, all the furniture, the doors, this curved wall. Wow. And so it was kind of luck, kind of me going, that was uncomfortable. Building it was very uncomfortable because I had never been a general contractor. I'd been a framer before, but I'd never been like responsible for the money of the whole thing, responsible for the inspections, responsible to all the authorities in charge. Like that was intense. Very intense and very uncomfortable for me because I didn't want to fail, certainly.
And you weren't doing things the typical way.
You asked, like,
right?
what's an uncomfortable, or like, that was a moment where it was like, I had to tap into all my strengths, just to, stay healthy, eat well, mentally be strong, physically be strong. Because I was building almost all of it physically myself.
24-foot panels. Yeah.
Yeah. Use my math skills, be honest, be very transparent with, hey, we thought it was going to be this, but it's this, inspector. What do we need to do to, and be a good communicator and be fair, and learn how to work with a client, and Brooks is certainly an artist. It was like my first client was an artist, and we've kind of been on that role. Most of our clients are artists in some form of another, or like heavy arts appreciators have been our client base this whole time, really. And so, it was kind of luck and opportunity that Tracebird started off as a design build company. And then I just kept going that way. I mean, out of 100 projects we've completed in the last 22 years, all but like 10 of them we built.
Wow.
And we're the general contractor. We self-perform a lot of it. I'm in our shop right now. We have a 8,000 square foot facility in Denver with full shop. I still collect reclaimed materials. I have 7 tons of artisan tile. We have bowling alley lanes over there, timbers. We've really stayed on that path. And it's interesting how, we stayed on that path of being the design builder, like the full service architect, but full service design builder, where the person that the client's building or designing the project with also becomes the person building the project, literally, like still.
Yeah.
Like I'm involved in all design of all projects, but my project manager is there from the first conversations in design and entitlements all the way through the build. They're the project manager. It's the same person. And I don't know of another firm that does it that way. It both attracts and retains a very special type of employee. It's someone that's not afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very skilled, healthy, motivated, confident, and wants to make the world a better place. And those people, I feel this is the biggest blessing in my life, have all found me.
Yeah.
Like my 20 employees right now have pretty much all found me. And I think they're the best of the best.
Yeah. I mean,
I know what they go through, and it is not an easy job.
Right. Yeah.
It's not an easy job at all. We are 100% accountable. Something's wrong. Something doesn't work. We fix it and we figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no pointing.
There's no contractor to point at. Yeah.
Nothing.
No.
It is, we are 100% accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a special person with a special stomach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because it seems like, there's, and especially right in the last 20 years or whatever, like design build is like a big kind of buzzword and like more people trying to do it. But it does seem like it's, I'm speaking very broadly, but some firms do it and then sort of get pulled to the construction side of it, where it's a little bit out of design. Right. And then some firms, can't quite hack the GC part and kind of fail or go off. But it's interesting how you're able to keep, I mean, that real art side, right? And like real environmental side and the construction side, and the architecture's meeting in the middle. And yeah, I mean, it kind of has to be those people, right? I mean, that's to be able to navigate all those lanes and yeah.
We're an architect-led design build firm.
Yeah, I think that's
AL.
Key. Yeah.
DB. And even one step further, and it's getting more this way, we're an artist-led design build firm. Because we are getting some of these bigger commissions for art museums and things that are very art-centric, and they're wanting to work with an artist. They're wanting to work with kin that they understand the language of, and that we understand their language and what's important, and that it's not all function.
Yeah.
I think, typically in design build, it's a contractual arrangement, right? You've got a general contractor and they, municipality wants a design build contract because they want to make sure that that they can hit a number, and then the GC hires an architecture firm. It's a contractual relationship, but it's really oil and water still. There's not a lot of mixing.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just the contract binds the oil and water. We don't have that at all. It's the same people doing both. And it is one of the biggest surprises I've had is that because I set it up this way, I'm attracting some of the best talent.
Yeah. And so
that was like a very happy surprise, right? that would be the result of a risk I took with a first project that just kind of kept going because it worked. Mm-hmm. And then there's all these other benefits to that format. Like we just experienced like this, the last couple of years, it got real topsy-turvy with projects. Like a bunch of projects canceled at once, new ones came up, whatever, but I was able to keep all my staff and keep them, at their salaries and secure because I had projects that were design build, and we have a ton of availability to build things. Like we sub out most everything, but like if we want to cherry pick the things that we want to build, we can. So I just, staff that was on the architecture project that just went away. Well, you're going to be building these timber walls at this other project, and we'll keep you employed, and everyone's happy about it, and everyone here is stoked. So it makes us, it's like that diversity in what people can do makes us sort of resilient.
Yeah.
And I've been through a few of these now, like the recession in 07, 08 was very impactful for us because I had one client then. I was working for Jake Burton of Burton Snowboards, and we were doing showrooms, flagship retail, and rider houses all over the world. We were working in Tokyo, Moscow, Innsbruck, Austria, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Denver. We just did. I mean, we've continued working with them since. Yeah. Our first project was in 05, and that was kind of a game changer for us, working with them and how that went. But all of a sudden that recession hit and all that work went away for a couple of years. And it made me really look like we weren't diverse. We had one client, one thing we were doing. No one knew who Trace Birds was in Denver, certainly. A handful of people, my friends, knew who we were in Boulder. And so we had nothing. I mean, there was no work. There was we had nothing. And it was at that moment I was like, you know what? I really want to be diverse. I want to take on diverse project types, diverse clients, diverse building types, diverse program. And I think in that diversity is strength. And that has proven to be true since.
So how'd you go about that? What did you have some genius marketing strategy that you implemented and
no marketing.
pulled that out? And
I've done no marketing other than I've had a website the whole time. I have I've been very conscious of hiring good photographers to capture our work because I made the mistake of not documenting any of my artwork all the way from being a little kid all the way through college. I have no documentation of anything, and I really wish I had it because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
So I've been very conscious of hiring and hiring good photographers. James Florio has been our photographer for the last maybe 7 years. And that's my marketing, is to be able to show what we did. I mean, that our projects come to us because of word of mouth, or someone experienced one of our buildings and they felt something and they asked who did this and they find us. That's it. And we have enough projects out there now where that can actually happen, because we have 100 projects that are out in the wild and people are eating in them or living in them or entertaining or, viewing art in them or whatever. So that we're able that, but very little marketing, proper marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it just feels like you have that sense of yourself, or at least good differentiation and within your architecture. You're building up this firm. You have this thesis. What project gets closest to that idea of thesis for you?
Oh. You're not going to like this answer, but all
Give
of
it to
them.
me.
We try our hardest on every single one. I really do. I would say the first that comes to mind, all of them. Really. The first that comes to mind is my own home, just because I wake up there every day and I spend a lot of time there. And it was a reclamation project. It was an existing kind of mediocre 80s, not very well built home, but.
And that's the project. Didn't you kind of stripped away the sheetrock in a lot of areas, and you see the exposed studs and.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah,
that's actually new space. So.
Okay.
So we kind of built it inside out.
Yeah,
It's very intentional framing, very intentional, to the point where we're planing every 2x6 and not revealing any seams of plywood, and integrated lighting that is recessed into structural members. And insulated from the outside. That construction type that we invented on my house was only possible with fluid applied waterproofing, which I'm a disciple of. I don't do projects without fluid applied waterproofing anymore. Just because it works and it's not that much more expensive, and it takes so much liability out. And if there is a mistake, you know about it before it's a mistake. And there's lots of reasons, but yeah, the insulation is on the outside. So it's literally exposed studs, ACX plywood. Everything's oiled and treated on the inside. And then it's fluid applied. And then it's 6 inches of foam. And then it's the old roofing from the existing house as the siding. And it's these very long screws that we had to map, so that we were hitting studs through 7 inches of material. And
you don't want to miss. Yeah.
You don't want to miss. You do, but then you start over and whatever. But we made a special little jig for the cordless drill that you do it with. Anyways, we've done it now several times. But that house, I think I mentioned that house just because the house had no eastern windows, and my wife and I are early morning, get up, pray, meditate, want to have that first sun, arrive to us and start our day. And so, our bedroom is just all about east, and we planted trees so that it's super private, and it's we're in the city of Boulder, and it's a very suburban zone. But when we're in our bedroom in the morning, we could be in a forest anywhere in the world. There's no sign of humankind or man-made anything. Our room is devoid of any symbology, any words. It's a neutral space that is a very direct and framed connection to the natural world, and weather and the moon. And it energizes me, and it makes me a better person. And it's a building that did that, which when I was a little kid, I would have thought the opposite. I thought buildings took you away from that. And I to be able to live in something that brings me closer to it feels, satisfying, and feels like I want to give that to as many people as possible, because it feels right.
Yeah. When you can actually do it, right? That thing that we all learn in school, and it doesn't get beat out of you in some firm, and then you actually do it. And then in your case, you get to live in it. And it's cool. So what are you most excited about for the future? What's the future of Trace Birds? And
I'm most excited about the future is that the world has a consciousness shift, because our brains are the most malleable thing ever known, and that we can all put our efforts towards restoring the health of the earth. That is what gets me up in the morning, and it's happening. And I'm surrounded by a group of people every day where we all have that same mentality, and we're approaching every project that way, and we're manifesting it. We as humans can manifest anything we want. If we want to manifest war, we can fucking manifest war. If we want to manifest healing the earth, we can do it in a split. We can do it immediately. And that is most inspirational to me. Architecturally specific, we're making or designing a building right now in Denver, a high rise that is it's made out of mass timber.
Oh, nice.
With the Katz brothers that have a very good spirit and very good intentions. And it is, the idea of using mass timber to create our big buildings and our density is our way forward.
Yeah.
A forest that pays is a forest that stays. And we have started to, in Canada and North America, really understand our forests. We clear cut them until the 80s, and then I think everyone realized that didn't work. Both Weyerhaeuser realized it, and certainly environmentalists realized it, and certainly the animals realized it. And we have more forests today than we did in 1980, and that is growing. And it is because we are using that wood, and it is receiving a fair price now. And these folks that own these forests realize that it is the new mining, but it's regenerative and it can come back. So it's not mining. Mining is finite, and a forest is infinite. The sun is infinite. I believe creativity is infinite, and that we can keep progressing this and honing it to the point where we have restored health, and we have something for our kids and 7 generations ahead. Certainly.
I love that, man. It's just so good to talk to you. It's been a desire of mine for so long, and to get this time, thank you, and the story, and just like your sort of infectious energy and optimism, and just these different concerns and you're actually doing it and putting it into such great buildings and around us here in Denver. And thanks for doing it, and thanks for coming on. Keep it up.
Yeah, you too. I really appreciate you and just getting the dialogue going. I've listened to a bunch of these podcasts. They've been really informative to me, and you are creating community through this. It's a new way of creating community, but you're doing it. So you keep it up too.
Thanks.
I appreciate you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
You got some cool models behind you. What are those of?
Yeah, these are like grad school models. So
those are amazing.
These ones, yeah. So this is I had Eisenman for a semester. And
wow,
it was a pretty intense thing where it was a partner project, but like every week he would come in one day a week, and you'd have to go in and you essentially had like final quality models every week for him to look at and destroy. And so we have like this is like the top part. Well, I guess this is the top, and then this is sort of the solid part. But I have a series of like 8 of these, and like half are my partners and half are mine, and
he destroy them literally.
No, I mean they're like solid wood, so he couldn't really do it, but just you mentally and emotionally he'd destroy you. But
where did you go to school?
I went to grad school at Yale.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. He's there.
Yeah. But that was like that was a just crazy learning experience with him specifically of essentially like what happens when you pretty much take away site and take away program. How do you design a project, a very rich project, and like it was so embedded in the history of architecture and typology and totally on another side, but it just builds up, these really different tools, and
Right.
and then like this one was
I wouldn't know what to do without a site.
Exactly.
I mean, I tap into the site so hard. That's like, it drives everything. For me, it kind of drives it. The function and the client are like part of it, but like the site is pretty much driving it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel that way and I felt that way, but it was sort of like, what happens when that crutch gets kicked out?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what I'd do.
I drowned. I mean, I was drowning the whole first half of the semester. I was by far at the lowest level. And then it's like, once you sort of click into what it's about, like we ended up winning the best project of the class or whatever, but,
Nice.
it's, and that's, I that's what I liked about Yale, where, I had three advanced studios, and it was 3 different people, and so you really got to like sample kind of these different ideas of ways of doing things, and then figure out what that makes. But
how are you liking teaching at CU?
Yeah, I like it. It's this constant balancing act of how to balance things, and it's like you love being in that experience, that environment, but then with my new office and the podcast, like one of those is going to suffer. And so it's hard.
And you have kids too, right?
And I have kids. Yeah.
Yeah. How old are they?
5 and 2.
Oh, so good. To cherish this. Just milk it for everything it's worth. That's all I can say. Cause mine are 19 and 15.
Oh yeah.
And they're amazing, but there's nothing like this time. It's so good.
I think especially
and hard. Very long days, very short years.
Yeah.
But like, it's special. I'll tell you that.
And my son is the 5-year-old, and now, it's like he is so loving to me. Like he loves me so much and tells me like 20 times a day, and like he's at school and I pick him up and he's like, I love my dad. And like all of his classmates are like clapping and cheering and like, yeah. Wow. I'm like, never change. Yes. Like
he will.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like next year. Yeah.
Fuck you, Dad.
Yeah.
But it'll come back.
Yeah. Eventually.
It'll come back. There's like
cycles of it.
Yeah. It comes back. I saw that. I have siblings and I saw, it comes back. As long as it was there once. Like if it was never there, there's families where it never happens, which is really sad. And I've seen that. But that you have that now, it may change, but it will like totally come back in ways you can't imagine.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how you deal with it, but just of this business and how difficult it is, and of I can so easily get myself so stressed out and be a bad dad, and be so focused on everything and like finding that balance. And I mean, it seems like, you have a great like physicality and like spirituality, like kind of centering maybe, but
at times, I mean, I get stressed out too, certainly. I would say that the thing that I did do that I would recommend is I never worked on weekends. I really, and like, I've also always had studios. Like I worked like the first few years of Trace Birds, I was like out of my little loft apartment. But like once I had kids, like I had studios. So I didn't, and like when I would come home, I literally would turn off my phone. No media. No doing a little bit of business. Get shit done during the day and work really hard. But then like when I was home, it was all about that. And then and I shouldn't say I never worked weekends because I certainly did. But I would say the last maybe 15 years, I haven't so much. But, I might work a 60-hour week and not see them for like 3 days straight because I'm leaving at 6 a.m. and I'm getting home at like 6. But then I'd be like super available all weekend, make them breakfast, go do something outside, hang out, like really immerse myself with them, because it's not very long before they're not going to be wanting to hang out with you on weekends.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like soon, like basically middle school, they're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how my girls were. Like I would like all weekend long, make them breakfast, go to the park, hang out, do whatever all day long, read them book to bed, whatever. But it's like till they're like 12 and it's done. It's quick. It's super quick. Quicker than I would like.
Yeah. And that's where it's so difficult, where it's, like I get up with them and eat breakfast, take them to school,
Cool.
and then I work at home, and then make dinner and hang out with them, and then, work from 8 to midnight or whatever. But it's like, and then I do try to take weekends off, or a good amount of it, but that's still only whatever, like 50 hours. And it's like, it just I'm not getting everything done, and I'm also a little too stretched out, but
I hear you. But
it's probably, so I just figured out, like, this year, or this 3 months ago, I figured out that I have ADHD. And so I'm learning more about that. And like, so that's kind of been helping me and like explain things, and like, well, why do I need to finish this whole, to-do list? Like, I don't, like, what happens if I don't do that? Nothing.
Right.
Like, push it off, and it's
how did you figure that out? Did you actually go talk to someone?
Yeah. So
get some tests and stuff?
Yeah. So my business partner, his wife has ADHD, and he was like, and one day we were kind of getting into it, and he was like, do you have ADHD? And I was like, fuck you. Like, why would you say that? Like, I thought it was like this bad thing. And he's like, no, I think for my wife, yeah, like you do. And so, then I got tested, and like, yeah, I do. And I'm like on medication and like therapist, and like, it's like discovering your brain in a whole new way. And it's like, I feel like you feel like when you're in studio, it like changes you, right? Like you're intensified, and like sort of you're working so many hours, and it's so intense. And then it's like, how does that drop off or not drop off when you get out of school? And I always kind of thought like, yeah, I'm just like addicted to stress or whatever. And so now, like, being able to put kind of a name to it and a kind of treatments to it has been helpful, but that's the very beginning of a journey.
Yeah, I imagine that I have, or certainly had, growing up.
Yeah. I was when you were explaining all the things you do, like, that's pretty classic. Like, yeah.
I mean, skateboarding, like trying to hit the same curve like 100 times at night just to see if you can do it is kind of. But I read a couple of these books, and you may have heard of this, but like, it's not a negative.
No, yeah.
It's like, there's hunters. You're a hunter. I'm a hunter. Mm-hmm. And there's gatherers. Mm-hmm. Like, right?
Yeah.
Hunter wants to be like fucking full senses on. It's time to go.
Yeah.
Like, there's this thing. You're out in the hunt. And then I don't know, like for me, like I like to go really hard, and then I like to super chill.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the hunter.
But you're super super chill is like a quarter of the time, and you're like hunting like 3/4. Like, kind of. Yeah. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I've heard about the ADHD, is where you're pretty much only fulfilled when you're creating, and like that's when you're and I think like people like you or me, like who maybe have it but don't know it for so long, you figure out ways to dealing with it, and you figure out like how to gain things when you're not creating or down. But it's
well, and then you just learn things like, don't do like beach vacations.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not fun
with kids. Yeah.
Or just being
too down.
Being the hunter doesn't want to sit and do nothing. Like, I would be like, that's not that I need to be moving all. Like, I don't know. You just work with it. It's not a negative. And I mean, back to the astrology thing, like that was the thing that like my wife taught me very early on. We were like first together. It was like, a lot of people talk about certain things like negative or positive, kind of like black and white thing, like certain attributes. Like for instance, like with my astrology, like how would I describe this? But like, I think about death quite a bit, and like pretty much every day.
Interesting.
Like, and it's not like you could describe someone who does that as like, whoa, that's fucking goth and negative and not good, right?
You just
who
wait
wants
for that
to be
next raven
thinking
to come
about
at you.
that?
Yeah.
But like for me, it's like motivational. It's like, dude, this could be the last one. Let's let's do this. Let's do it right and make the most of it. And because I don't know, it's more, so it's like, and these aspects in astrology, like, it's amazing how right on they are for people, and how right on, like I mentioned earlier about like contracts and stuff like that. Like my wife will just like give me briefs. She'll be like, hey, next month, these weeks, it's going to be a shit show of technology. Just be aware. Don't get stressed out. I would,
Wow.
or like even things like this last year was like, hey, during February, like, it would behoove you to put time into like looking for real estate. Cause I'm looking, we've been renting. We're in like our 7th studio right now, and we've always rented these spaces. I really want to build like the proper like Trace Birds facility, because we're so unique, and I want to like do it right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, this is like, there's these 6 weeks where it's going to be kind of on for you to find something like that. Like, just interesting. It's yeah, a lot of people poo-poo it, like New Age and occult and all that, and it's like, it's so old, and it's all about the astrologists and how they present it, but it's all like just trying to be the best you can be. That's all it's about.
Yeah,
really.
that
It's
sounds
nothing
good.
more than that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's cool.
All right, man. Have a good week. Get with your kids.
Yeah.
Enjoy. I really appreciate this. And let's keep going. Let me know how I can help you with this stuff too,
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yo, Alexa, play the Plug podcast. My boy Rudolph enjoys an immersive audio experience. Do you feel me? Ho, ho, ho! With Echo Studio, we can listen to any podcast or song from Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Click the link in this episode description.
Santa, check out my podcast.
Damn, even the Grinch has a podcast. Merry Christmas, ho! Ho, ho!